Imagine waking up before sunrise, putting on a 40-pound armor, and marching for hours under the scorching sun. That was the reality of Roman soldiers, the men who built one of the greatest empires in history. But what do we really know about their daily lives? Roman soldiers weren't just warriors, they were engineers, builders, and even farmers. Their discipline and organization were crucial for the expansion and maintenance of the Roman Empire. Today, we're diving into the routine of these men, exploring their responsibilities, rigorous training, and the equipment that made them so feared across the ancient world. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries of the great empires like this video, subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel and don't miss a single episode. To become a Roman soldier, a young man needed to be at least 17 years old and hold Roman citizenship. This wasn't a career choice taken lightly. Once recruited, these young men entered a life of extreme discipline that would test their physical and mental limits for decades to come. Roman soldiers signed up for an incredible 25 years of service. Just imagine a quarter century of your life dedicated to Rome. During this entire time, they were officially forbidden from marrying. The empire wanted soldiers focused solely on their duties, not distracted by family concerns. Despite this restriction, many soldiers formed unofficial families in the towns where they were stationed, creating communities around the military forts that eventually grew into some of the great cities of Europe. Did you know that Roman soldiers received part of their payment in salt? This precious commodity was so valuable in the ancient world that it gave us the word salary, which we still use today. Beyond salt, soldiers were paid in silver coins called denarii, each one stamped with the emperor's face, a constant reminder of who they served. These coins would travel with the legions, spreading Roman culture and economy throughout the conquered territories and beyond. The life of a Roman recruit wasn't just about fighting. These men became part of a brotherhood that would define their entire existence. From the moment they took their oath of service, they belonged to Rome completely, their very bodies considered property of the empire they served. The training regimen of Roman soldiers would make even our modern military forces wince. These men endured what can only be described as brutal physical conditioning. Imagine marching nearly 19 miles every single day while carrying equipment weighing up to 60 pounds. This wasn't just a test of strength, but a deliberate strategy to build the toughest fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. Combat training was equally intense. Each recruit learned to wield the gladius, a short sword perfectly designed for the Roman style of fighting. This weapon, barely 20 inches long, was deadly in close combat, allowing soldiers to stab quickly between enemy shields. They also mastered the pilum, a heavy javelin that could pierce through shields and armor alike. What made this weapon particularly ingenious was its design. The iron tip would bend upon impact, making it impossible for enemies to throw it back. But perhaps the most fearsome aspect of Roman military life was its iron discipline. The Romans understood that an army's strength came not just from individual skill, but from absolute obedience to orders. Disobedience was punished with shocking severity. The most dreaded punishment was decimation, a word that has lost its original terrifying meaning over time. When a unit was found guilty of serious misconduct, such as cowardice or mutiny, every 10th man would be selected by lottery and beaten to death by his own comrades. Just imagine standing in formation, watching as officers walk down the line, counting 1, 2, 3, knowing that every 10th man would not see tomorrow's sunrise. This brutal practice ensured that fear of punishment often outweighed fear of the enemy. Even more chilling, the remaining soldiers in the punished unit would be given barley instead of wheat for rations and forced to sleep outside the protection of the camp, a reminder that their lives hung by a thread. The Romans didn't just build an army, they forged a machine of war where every man moved, fought, and even died as one. This wasn't just training. It was transformation, turning ordinary citizens into the unstoppable force that would conquer much of the known world. The equipment of a Roman soldier was nothing short of a masterpiece of military engineering. At the heart of this arsenal was the lorica segmentata, a segmented plate armor that offered exceptional protection while allowing remarkable mobility. These metal strips, held together by leather straps, could be repaired easily on campaign, a practical solution for an army that might be fighting hundreds of miles from home. But what truly set Roman soldiers apart was their iconic shield, the scutum. This massive rectangular shield, curved to fit the body, stood about 4 feet tall and weighed around 20 pounds. Made from layers of wood glued together and covered with canvas and leather, the scutum was both lightweight and incredibly sturdy. When soldiers locked their shields together in formation, they created an almost impenetrable wall. The distinctive boss in the center, that metal knob you've probably noticed in movies, wasn't just decorative. It could be used to punch an opponent, turning defense into offense in a heartbeat. Perhaps most impressive was that Roman soldiers weren't just fighters. They were a mobile construction crew. Each man carried tools that collectively transformed the legion into a building force. Every evening, no matter how exhausted from marching, soldiers would dig trenches, erect wooden fortifications, and construct a temporary camp complete with defensive structures. This wasn't just tradition, it was survival. A well-fortified camp could mean the difference between life and death in hostile territory. The Roman soldiers' pack included a dalabra, a combination axe and pickaxe, shovels, wicker baskets for moving earth, cooking equipment, and even portable mills to grind grain. This equipment allowed the Roman army to be self-sufficient, building roads, bridges, and fortifications as they expanded the empire. The roads they built 2,000 years ago are so well constructed that many still form the foundation of modern European highways today. So did you know that Roman soldiers received part of their payment in salt? If you're enjoying this journey into the lives of Rome's legendary warriors, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel for more incredible historical stories. And tell us in the comments, which aspect of Roman soldiers' lives has surprised you the most so far? When not engaged in battle, Roman soldiers lived in fortified encampments called castra. These weren't just simple collections of tents. They were essentially mobile cities that could house thousands of men with remarkable efficiency. Every camp, whether temporary or permanent, followed the same standardized layout. This meant that a soldier could be moved from Britain to Syria and still find his way around camp on the first day, an early example of brilliant organizational thinking. Life inside these castra followed a strict routine. The day began before dawn with the sound of trumpets. After a breakfast of porridge or bread, soldiers would perform weapons drills and training exercises to maintain their combat readiness. But military life wasn't all about fighting. During peacetime, which was actually most of a soldier's career, the legion transformed into a massive public works department. The streets you walk on throughout Europe today owe their existence to these men. Roman soldiers built over 50,000 miles of roads across the empire, perfectly straight when possible and masterfully engineered to last millennia. They constructed bridges that stood for centuries, aqueducts that delivered fresh water to distant cities, and harbor facilities that revolutionized trade. The famous Roman baths, found throughout the former empire, were often built by military engineers. In a very real sense, these soldiers were creating civilization as they conquered. Inside the camp, you'd find a surprising array of amenities. There were workshops where weapons and equipment were repaired, granaries to store food, stables for horses, and even hospitals where the wounded received surprisingly sophisticated medical care. Archaeological evidence shows that Roman military surgeons performed successful amputations, removed arrows and other missiles from bodies, and even conducted primitive but effective brain surgeries. Their medical knowledge was so advanced that it wouldn't be matched in Europe for almost 1,000 years after the empire's fall. One of the most important facilities in any permanent camp was the bathhouse. Romans took their bathing seriously. It wasn't just about cleanliness, but also socialization. Here, off-duty soldiers could relax in hot pools, clean themselves with olive oil instead of soap, and gossip about camp life. Many permanent forts even had flush toilets, a luxury that would disappear from most of Europe for centuries after Rome's decline. These castra were so well designed and positioned that many grew into major European cities. London, Vienna, Budapest, and dozens of other modern metropolises began as Roman military camps. Next time you visit a European city whose name ends in Chester, Cester, or Caster, like Manchester or Winchester, you're walking through what was once a Roman military installation, a testament to the lasting impact these soldiers had on our world. In battle, Roman soldiers were the masters of coordination and discipline. Their most famous formation, the testudo, or tortoise, was a sight that struck fear into enemy hearts across the ancient world. Imagine hundreds of men moving as one, their rectangular shields raised overhead and to the sides, creating an impenetrable shell that resembled a tortoise's protective carapace. This wasn't just impressive, it was engineering genius applied to warfare. When arrows and stones rained down from enemy positions, the testudo formation allowed Roman legions to advance virtually unharmed. Contemporary accounts describe how enemy projectiles would simply bounce off this human fortress. During the conquest of Dacia in the early 2nd century after Christ, scenes on Trajan's column show Roman soldiers in testudo formation advancing under heavy fire, their discipline making them seemingly invincible. But the true brilliance of Roman military strategy went far beyond defensive formations. The Romans pioneered the use of flexible tactics that could adapt to any battlefield situation. Their standard fighting formation divided the legion into 3 lines: the hastati in front, the princeps in the middle, and the triarii in the rear. This allowed for fresh troops to continuously rotate to the front lines, preventing exhaustion and maintaining constant pressure on the enemy. The Romans understood something that many of their opponents didn't. Warfare wasn't just about courage or numbers, but about logistics, discipline, and psychological warfare. Before major battles, Roman commanders would often have their soldiers construct a full camp, complete with defenses, showing the enemy they were prepared for any outcome. This display of confidence and organization often demoralized opposing forces before a single javelin was thrown. Perhaps most impressive was the adaptability of Roman tactics. When facing the Carthaginian war elephants, they created special formations with corridors that allowed the beasts to pass through their lines harmlessly. Against the lightning-fast Parthian cavalry, they developed counter-tactics involving mixed units of infantry and mounted archers. When Germanic tribes ambushed them in dense forests, they adjusted their equipment and fighting style to suit close-quarter woodland combat. One fascinating aspect of Roman battlefield success was their use of standardized signals. Trumpets, flags, and even hand signals allowed commanders to coordinate complex maneuvers across vast battlefields. This communication system was so effective that legions could execute sophisticated battlefield tactics that wouldn't be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. The Romans were also masters of psychological warfare. Before battle, they would often have their entire army create a deafening noise by shouting and striking their weapons against their shields. This wall of sound, combined with the gleaming armor of thousands of soldiers moving in perfect unison, was often enough to break enemy morale before the fighting even began. This combination of tactical flexibility, iron discipline, and psychological insight meant that Roman armies regularly defeated forces many times their size. It wasn't just about having the best equipment or the most men. It was about having the best system, the most disciplined soldiers, and the most adaptable tactics in the ancient world. After 25 years of marching, fighting, and building for Rome, The surviving veterans faced a moment that many had dreamed of throughout their service: retirement. Unlike modern soldiers who might receive a pension check, Roman veterans were rewarded with something far more valuable in the ancient world: land. These retirement parcels weren't just random plots. They were carefully selected properties in the very provinces these men had helped conquer and pacify. Imagine fighting for years to secure a distant territory, then being granted ownership of a piece of that same land. There's a poetic justice to this system of reward. For men who had spent their entire adult lives owning little more than their weapons and personal effects, becoming landowners represented a dramatic rise in social status. Along with land, veterans received a substantial cash payment, a nest egg to help establish their new civilian lives. Historical records show that under Emperor Augustus, this sum could equal 13 years of a soldier's regular pay, a considerable fortune by the standards of the time. Many veterans used this money to build homes, purchase slaves, and establish businesses in their new communities. These retired soldiers became the backbone of Romanization throughout the empire. As they settled in frontier provinces from Britain to Syria, they brought with them Roman customs, language, architecture, and governance. They established veteran colonies, many of which grew into major cities that still thrive today. Cities like Cologne in Germany, York in England, and Seville in Spain all began as settlements of Roman veterans. When you walk through these streets today, you're literally walking through the retirement dreams of ancient soldiers. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this system was how it transformed conquered peoples into Romans. Veterans often married local women, creating families that blended Roman and provincial cultures. Their children grew up speaking Latin alongside local languages, worshipping Roman gods alongside local deities, and identifying as citizens of Rome, despite being born far from the eternal city. This gradual cultural fusion was arguably Rome's most lasting conquest, not by sword, but by settlement. Archaeological digs across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East continue to uncover the homes of these veteran settlers. Unlike the grand monuments of emperors, these modest villas and farms tell the story of ordinary men who, after extraordinary service, sought the simple comforts of civilian life. From garden tools to dinner plates, from family shrines to boundary markers, these everyday objects paint a picture of former warriors who became farmers, merchants, and local leaders. The legacy of these retired soldiers extends far beyond physical remains. Many of our modern military traditions, from retirement benefits to veteran status, have their origins in the Roman system. The very concept that a state owes something to those who fought for it, that military service deserves reward, is a Roman innovation that continues to shape our world today. So the next time you see ruins of a Roman fort or villa in the countryside, remember, you might be looking at more than just ancient stones. You might be looking at the retirement home of a man who marched thousands of miles, fought dozens of battles, and then, finally, hung up his sword to plant olive trees and watch his grandchildren grow up under the peace his service had helped secure. The life of a Roman soldier was a remarkable blend of discipline, hard work, and sacrifice. These men weren't just warriors clashing on distant battlefields. They were the architects and engineers of civilization itself. With every march, every battle, and every road they built, they forged an empire that would shape the world for millennia to come. When we look at maps of the ancient world, we tend to see the grand sweep of imperial borders and the names of famous generals and emperors. But the true story of Rome's greatness lies in the countless unnamed men who carried those heavy shields, who marched those dusty roads, who built those enduring walls. They came from humble beginnings, farmers, craftsmen, shopkeepers, yet they created something that would outlast them by thousands of years. What's perhaps most remarkable about these soldiers is how their influence continues to touch our lives today. The languages we speak, the laws we follow, the very borders of many modern nations, all bear the imprint of these men who marched under the eagle standards. From the Latin roots in our everyday speech to the principles of engineering in our infrastructure, the legacy of Roman soldiers surrounds us, often unnoticed but profoundly important. Their story reminds us that behind every great historical achievement stand ordinary people, men and women who, through extraordinary commitment and sacrifice, changed the course of history. The Roman legionary, with his gladius at his side and his pack on his back, didn't set out to create an eternal legacy. He simply did his duty, day after day, year after year, and in doing so he built a world. If you enjoyed this journey into the daily lives of Roman soldiers, please hit that like button, share this video with friends who love history, and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel for more content about the ancient world. What ancient civilization would you like us to explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Until our next historical adventure.